Welcome, night traveler. Welcome to this quiet space we're creating together beneath the moon's gentle watch. If you've found your way here tonight, perhaps it's because you recognize that peculiar ache that has no clear source, that loneliness that arrives even when you're not alone, that restlessness that settles into your chest as the world grows dark and quiet around you. This feeling needs no justification, no explanation, no defense. It simply is, and that is enough reason for us to sit with it together for a while. There's something about the nighttime hours that makes everything feel more acute, more real, more raw. The distractions of daylight fade away, and we're left with ourselves in a way that can feel both liberating and terrifying. The silence becomes louder, the darkness becomes more present, and sometimes, inexplicably, we feel most alone when there's no logical reason for it. We might be surrounded by people who love us. We might have accomplished everything we set out to do. We might have every reason to feel connected and content. And yet, there it is, that hollow feeling, that sense of separation, that quiet ache that has no name and no easy remedy. Tonight, we're not going to try to fix this feeling or make it disappear. We're not going to analyze it into submission or distract ourselves from its presence. Instead, we're going to explore what ancient Zen wisdom teaches us about this very human experience, this sensation of being alone that transcends our external circumstances. We're going to discover that this loneliness you feel, this ineffable sense of separation, might actually be pointing towards something profound, something that every contemplative tradition has grappled with throughout human history. The Buddha spoke of a deep knowing that comes through facing our experience directly, without flinching, without running, without constructing elaborate stories about what it means. Zen teachers throughout the centuries have sat with this exact feeling, have explored its depths, have emerged with insights that can transform our relationship with solitude from something we fear into something that becomes a doorway. Not a doorway that leads away from the loneliness, but one that leads us deeper into understanding what loneliness actually is, what it's truly asking of us, and how it might be serving us in ways we haven't yet recognized. So tonight, let yourself settle in. Let the weight of your body rest fully into whatever surface supports you. Notice the darkness around you, the silence punctuated perhaps by distant sounds that remind you the world continues its turning. Notice your breath moving in and out, requiring nothing from you, asking nothing of you, simply continuing its ancient rhythm that has sustained you since your very first moment of life. You don't have to be anyone right now. You don't have to accomplish anything. You don't have to understand or resolve or transform. You simply have to be here, breathing, present with whatever arises. This exploration will take time, several hours in fact, and that's exactly what we need. Because the rushed solutions, the quick fixes, the surface-level reassurances never quite reach the depth where this loneliness lives. Tonight, we're going deeper. We're taking the long path through the night garden of the mind, stopping to notice what grows there, what wisdom the darkness holds, what the moon has been trying to tell us all along. Let's begin. The paradox of lonely presence. Exists a particular quality of loneliness that defies easy categorization. It's not the loneliness of physical isolation when you find yourself miles from another human being. It's not the loneliness of losing someone dear when grief carves out a space that was once filled with presence. It's not even the loneliness of being misunderstood, though it shares some kinship with that experience. This is something else entirely. A loneliness that arrives unbidden even when you're surrounded by friends, even when you've just had a wonderful conversation, even when by all external measures you should feel connected and complete. This ineffable loneliness often strikes in the quiet moments between events. You're sitting at your desk as evening falls, and suddenly there it is, a wave of something you can't quite name. You're driving home after a good day, and without warning, you feel profoundly alone, despite being moments away from people who care about you. You're lying in bed next to someone you love, and yet feel separated by an unbridgeable distance that has nothing to do with physical space and everything to do with some deeper sense of apartness. What makes this loneliness so difficult to articulate is precisely its lack of clear causation. When someone asks if you're okay, you can't point to any particular thing that's wrong. You can't say, "I feel lonely because," and complete the sentence honestly. The loneliness precedes the reasons, exists independent of circumstances, refuses to be reduced to any simple explanation. It's a loneliness of being, not of doing or having any particular external thing. In Buddhist philosophy, particularly within the Zen tradition, this kind of experience is recognized as something profound rather than pathological. There's a teaching story about a monk who approached his master and said, "Master, I practice diligently. I sit in meditation. I follow all the precepts, and yet I sometimes feel unbearably alone." The master replied, "Good. Now you're finally beginning to pay attention." This response, seemingly harsh, actually points towards a deep truth that we'll explore throughout this night, that this feeling of existential aloneness isn't a problem to be solved, but rather a doorway into understanding the fundamental nature of human consciousness. The contemporary Zen teacher Pema Children speaks of what she calls hot loneliness and cool loneliness, two different relationships we can have with this experience of feeling alone. Hot loneliness is the panicked, restless version, where we're desperate to escape the feeling, reaching for anything to fill the void. Social media, food, entertainment, busyness, even creating drama just to feel something other than that raw sense of aloneness. Cool loneliness, by contrast, is what emerges when we stop fighting the experience and instead become curious about it. What is this feeling really? Where does it live in the body? What thoughts accompany it? What happens if we don't immediately try to make it go away? Cool loneliness isn't the absence of the feeling, but rather a different quality of presence with it, one that has space and breath and the possibility of insight. It's loneliness that has cooled from desperate heat into something more workable, more honest, more real. The architecture of existential solitude. To truly understand this unexplained loneliness, we need to examine what contemporary psychology and ancient wisdom both recognize, that human beings exist in a fundamental condition that might be best described as alone together. We are, each of us, having a completely unique subjective experience that no one else can ever fully access. Your exact experience of this moment, the particular quality of your awareness, the specific constellation of sensations and thoughts and feelings is yours alone. No matter how deeply our connections with others, no matter how much we love in return, this basic fact remains. Consciousness is singular.
This isn't cause for despair, though it can certainly feel that way when we first really recognize it. It's simply the architecture of being human. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio writes about what he calls the feeling of what happens, the way consciousness creates a sense of self by continuously constructing a narrative from the flow of sensory and emotional experience. But this construction is happening inside a skull, behind eyes, within a body that is fundamentally separate from all other bodies. The rich inner world we inhabit is our own private universe, one we can describe to others but never fully share. When we feel that inexplicable loneliness, we might actually be brushing up against this fundamental truth about the nature of consciousness. We're feeling the edges of our own being, the boundary between self and other, between inner and outer, between the rich subjective world we inhabit and the objective world that exists independent of our perception. This isn't a flaw in our psychology or a sign of depression, though those can certainly exacerbate the feeling. It's the human condition itself becoming conscious of its own structure. The Buddhist concept of shunyata, often translated as emptiness or voidness, speaks directly to this experience. It doesn't mean nihilistic emptiness or the absence of everything. Rather, it points toward the lack of inherent, independent existence in all phenomena, including the self. When we look for a solid, permanent self that's feeling lonely, we can't quite find it. The I that feels alone is itself empty of inherent existence. It's a process, not a thing. It's a verb masquerading as a noun. And when we start to sense this truth directly, rather than just understanding it intellectually, it can trigger that very feeling of groundlessness, of aloneness, of not being able to find solid footing anywhere. This understanding doesn't necessarily make the loneliness disappear, but it transforms our relationship with it. Instead of seeing it as a personal failing or a problem to be fixed, we begin to recognize it as what the Japanese call mono no aware, the pathos of things, the bittersweet awareness of impermanence and the impossible beauty of existence. There's something almost tender in this recognition, something that opens rather than closes, that softens rather than hardens. Why we feel alone even when surrounded. The modern world presents us with a particular paradox. We are more connected than ever before in human history, and yet rates of reported loneliness have been climbing steadily for decades. We can communicate instantly with people across the globe. We can see into the lives of hundreds or thousands of acquaintances through social media. We live in cities crowded with millions of people, and yet that deep sense of connection, of being truly seen and known and met in our full humanity, often feels more elusive than ever. This paradox reveals something important about the nature of connection and loneliness. Loneliness isn't actually caused by being alone. It's caused by feeling alone, and these are not the same thing. You can be physically alone and feel deeply connected to yourself, to nature, to the web of life, to something greater than yourself, and experience no loneliness whatsoever. Conversely, you can be in a room full of people and feel utterly isolated, completely unseen, profoundly lonely. Research by neuroscientist John Cacioppo, who dedicated his career to studying loneliness, revealed that loneliness is less about being alone and more about a perceived gap between the social connections we want and the ones we actually have. But it goes even deeper than that. His work showed that loneliness actually changes how our brains process social information. When we're lonely, we become hypervigilant to social threats, more likely to interpret ambiguous social cues negatively, more prone to feeling rejected or excluded, more defensive in our interactions with others. This creates a vicious cycle. Loneliness makes us perceive social situations as threatening, which causes us to withdraw or act defensively, which leads to genuine rejection, which confirms our sense of loneliness. From a Buddhist perspective, this hypervigilance and defensive posture arises from what's called the self-protecting or self-preserving tendency of the ego. When we feel that existential loneliness, that sense of being fundamentally separate, the ego tries to protect this separate self by building walls, by staying safe, by not risking the vulnerability that genuine connection requires. The irony is in trying to protect ourselves from the pain of loneliness, we actually perpetuate it. We become so focused on managing our isolation that we can't genuinely open to connection even when it's offered. The Zen master Dogen wrote about the self-awareness that comes through meditation practice. To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. This teaching points toward a profound paradox. It's only by letting go of our desperate clinging to the separate self that we can experience genuine connection. When we stop defending our isolation, stop trying to maintain the fortress of self, we discover we were never truly separate to begin with. But getting there requires moving through the loneliness, not around it. The bodily experience of unnameable loneliness. This loneliness that can't be explained doesn't live primarily in our thoughts, though thoughts certainly accompany it. It lives in the body as a complex constellation of physical sensations that we interpret as emotional pain. There's often a heaviness in the chest, as if something is pressing down on the heart. There might be a hollow feeling in the belly, a sense of something missing or empty. The throat might feel tight, even though we're not crying or about to cry. The shoulders might curl inward as if trying to protect something vulnerable. These bodily sensations are not metaphorical, they're the actual substance of what we call loneliness. The contemporary understanding of embodied cognition reveals that emotions are not generated in some abstract mental realm and then experienced in the body. Rather, emotions are fundamentally bodily phenomena that we then interpret and label with our thinking minds. The heavy chest, the tight throat, the hollow belly, these sensations arise first, and then we recognize them as loneliness based on our past experience and cultural conditioning. This is why simply trying to think your way out of loneliness rarely works. You can't convince the body to feel differently through logical argument or positive thinking. The sensations have their own intelligence, their own reasons for being present. They're communicating something, even if we don't yet know what. Traditional Buddhist meditation practices recognize this by directing attention to the direct physical experience of emotional states rather than the stories we tell about them. When we feel that inexplicable loneliness settling into the body at night, we can practice meeting it directly rather than immediately spinning into thoughts about what it means or why it's there. We can notice, where exactly does this feeling live in the body? What's its texture? Heavy or light? Dense or spacious? Hot or cold? Does it have a color or shape if we were to imagine it? Does it move or remain still? Does it pulse or ebb and flow? These aren't silly questions, they're ways of bringing precise attention to what's actually happening rather than what we think is happening. The Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh taught a practice he called embracing our pain. When loneliness arises, rather than pushing it away, we can imagine ourselves holding it the way we might hold a crying child. We can say to the loneliness, "I'm here. I see you. I'm not going anywhere." This isn't about making the feeling go away, it's about changing our relationship with it from
adversarial to caring. The loneliness is part of our experience in this moment, and it deserves the same kindness we would offer any other part of our being. What many people discover when they practice this kind of gentle, embodied attention to loneliness is that the feeling begins to shift and change. Not because we're trying to make it change, but because everything is always changing when we're not clinging to it or pushing it away. The heavy chest might soften slightly, the hollow belly might fill with breath, the tight throat might release just a little. And even if the sensations don't change dramatically, our suffering begins to ease because we're no longer suffering about suffering. We're no longer adding the extra layer of resistance and judgment to what's already difficult. Loneliness as teacher, not enemy. In the tradition of Zen Buddhism, there's a recognition that our greatest teachers often come in forms we don't initially recognize as beneficial. Difficult emotions, challenging circumstances, even our own neuroses can be what the tradition calls skillful means, doorways into deeper understanding if we know how to work with them. Loneliness, especially this inexplicable variety that arrives without clear cause, can be one of our most profound teachers if we're willing to learn its lessons. What does loneliness teach us? First, and perhaps most importantly, it teaches us about impermanence. That heavy feeling of loneliness, when we sit with it without trying to make it go away, will not stay constant. It will shift and change, sometimes intensifying, sometimes easing, revealing itself to be not a solid thing, but a process, a wave that rises and falls. This direct experience of emotional impermanence can crack open our whole understanding of reality. If even this feeling that seems so solid and permanent is actually fluid and changing, what else that we take as fixed and real is actually empty and impermanent?
Loneliness also teaches us about our deep, often unconscious beliefs about connection and separation. When we feel lonely, we're usually operating from an unexamined assumption that connection is something outside ourselves that we lack, something we need to acquire or achieve or deserve. But what if connection isn't something we lack, but rather something we're failing to notice? What if the sense of separation itself is a kind of optical illusion created by the way consciousness works, and the reality is that we're always already connected to everything? There's a beautiful Zen story about a wave in the ocean who was suffering terribly, afraid of the moment when it would crash on the shore and cease to exist. Another wave said to the suffering wave, "You're afraid because you think you're a wave, but actually you're the ocean." This isn't just a comforting metaphor, it points toward a direct experiential truth that meditation and contemplation can reveal. The boundary between self and other, between inner and outer, is nowhere near as solid as it seems. We are processes within processes, waves within the ocean, constantly exchanging matter and energy with everything around us. The sense of being a separate, isolated self is a useful fiction that consciousness creates, but it's not the deepest truth of our being. When inexplicable loneliness arrives, it might be inviting us to investigate this sense of separation more closely, not to make it go away by finding the right connection outside ourselves, but to look directly at the feeling of being separate and ask, is this actually true? Who or what is it that feels lonely? Can you find the boundaries of this self that's alone? Where does you end and not you begin? These aren't rhetorical questions, but invitations to direct investigation. The nighttime intensification of solitude. There's a reason this particular loneliness often intensifies at night. The darkness removes the visual distractions that occupy our attention during daylight hours. The quiet eliminates the ambient noise that provides a kind of social proof that we're part of a living, breathing world. The stillness forces us to confront our own inner experience without the buffer of activity and movement. Night has always been the time when humans turn inward, when the boundary between conscious and unconscious grows thin, when dreams arise and the rational daylight mind loosens its grip. Our circadian rhythms, those ancient biological clocks that regulate nearly every aspect of our physiology, undergo profound shifts as night falls. The pineal gland begins producing melatonin, signaling to the body that it's time for rest and repair. But melatonin doesn't just make us sleepy, it affects mood regulation, emotional processing, and the way we experience ourselves and the world. Studies in chronobiology have shown that our emotional baseline naturally dips in the evening and nighttime hours, making us more vulnerable to feelings of sadness, anxiety, and yes, loneliness. The contemporary psychologist Matthew Walker, whose research focuses on sleep and its relationship to mental health, has identified what he calls emotional brain sensitivity that increases at night when we're sleep-deprived or in that liminal space between waking and sleeping. The amygdala, that ancient part of the brain associated with fear and emotional reactivity, becomes more active, while the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotional responses, becomes less active. This neurological shift means we're literally less able to put things in perspective, less capable of the cognitive reappraisal that helps us manage difficult feelings during daylight hours. But beyond the biology, there's something more profound happening in our relationship with nighttime solitude. The Zen tradition speaks of what they call the dark night of the soul, not as a pathological experience, but as a necessary passage in spiritual development. It's the time when all our usual supports and crutches fall away, when we can't distract ourselves from the fundamental questions of existence, when we're forced to confront what lies at the core of our being. This doesn't happen according to our schedule or at our convenience. It often happens at 3 in the morning when we wake suddenly with that hollow feeling in our chest and no clear reason for it. The medieval Christian mystic John of the Cross described this experience not as something to avoid, but as the soul's necessary emptying before it can be filled with something true. He wrote, "In order to arrive at having pleasure in everything, desire to have pleasure in nothing." This isn't nihilism or depression, it's a radical letting go of our usual ways of finding meaning and connection, creating space for a deeper truth to emerge. The inexplicable loneliness we feel at night might be this same process, a necessary emptying, a stripping away of false supports, a dark passage towards something more authentic. Sunyata, the liberating void. At the heart of Zen Buddhism, and indeed all Mahayana Buddhism, lies the teaching of sunyata, commonly translated as emptiness, but perhaps better understood as open possibility or lack of inherent existence. This concept is not the nihilistic emptiness of having nothing or being nothing. Rather, it points toward the fundamental nature of reality, that nothing exists independently, separately, with its own unchanging essence. Everything that exists does so only in relation to everything else, arising from causes and conditions, constantly changing, lacking any fixed permanent nature. This teaching might seem abstract or philosophical, but it has profound implications for understanding that inexplicable loneliness we've been exploring. If we examine the feeling of loneliness with the precision that Zen practice encourages, what do we actually find? We find a constellation of bodily sensations, thoughts, memories, associations. But can we find a solid, unchanging thing called loneliness? Can we locate the separate self who is lonely? The great Zen master Dogen, founder of the Soto Zen school in Japan, taught that to study the self is to forget the self. This forgetting is not a loss of identity or a descent into confusion. Rather, it's the recognition that what we think of as a solid, separate self is actually a process, a flow, an ever-changing stream of experience that we retroactively label as I or me. When we try to grasp this self, we can't quite catch hold of it. It's like trying to grasp water. The very act of grasping causes it to slip away. The contemporary Zen teacher, Charlotte Joko Beck, spoke often about how our suffering comes from our resistance to what is. We create what she called the substitute life, a fantasy about how things should be that we constantly compare with how things actually are. When we feel lonely, we're often comparing our current experience with some imagined state of connection or wholeness that we believe we should have. But this ideal state is empty too. It exists only as a concept, not as a reality. We suffer not from the actual experience of being alone, but from the gap between this experience and our ideas about how we should feel. The sunyata teaches us that this gap itself is empty. It's a mental construction, not a real thing. The loneliness we feel is real as an experience, but it's not solid or permanent or indicative of some essential truth about our being. It's a wave in the ocean of consciousness, arising from certain causes and conditions, and it will inevitably change when those causes and conditions change. We don't have to make it change. Change is its nature. We don't have to fix ourselves or our circumstances. There's nothing fundamentally wrong or broken. We simply have to stop adding layers of resistance and storytelling to the bare experience itself. This teaching can sound cold or uncaring, as if we're being told to just accept our suffering and not try to make things better. But that's a misunderstanding. The recognition of emptiness doesn't lead to passive resignation, but rather to a profound freedom. If loneliness has no solid, unchanging essence, then we're not trapped by it. If the self that feels lonely is itself empty of fixed identity, then we're not defined by this feeling. We can meet the experience with interest and curiosity rather than fear and resistance. The paradox of aloneness as completeness. One of the most counterintuitive teachings in Zen Buddhism is that our fundamental nature is complete just as it is. Not complete in the sense of being perfect or having everything we need, but complete in the sense of lacking nothing essential. The Buddhist term for this is tathata, suchness or thusness. It means that things are exactly as they are, complete in their very being, before we add all our judgments and stories and desires for them to be different. When we apply this teaching to the experience of loneliness, something remarkable happens. Instead of seeing loneliness as evidence that something is missing, that we lack connection or love or belonging, we can begin to see it as simply what's present in this moment. The loneliness is complete in itself. It's not pointing towards something else we need to acquire. It's not a problem requiring a solution. It's just this sensation in the chest, this thought passing through awareness, this momentary state that has arisen from causes and conditions and will pass when those conditions change. We don't have to make it change. Change is its nature. We don't have to fix ourselves or our circumstances. There's nothing fundamentally wrong or broken. We simply have to stop adding layers of resistance and storytelling to the bare experience itself. This teaching can sound cold or uncaring, as if we're being told to just accept our suffering and not try to make things better. But that's a misunderstanding. The recognition of emptiness doesn't lead to passive resignation, but rather to a profound freedom. If loneliness has no solid, unchanging essence, then we're not trapped by it. If the self that feels lonely is itself empty of fixed identity, then we're not defined by this feeling. We can meet the experience with interest and curiosity rather than fear and resistance. The paradox of aloneness as completeness. One of the most counterintuitive teachings in Zen Buddhism is that our fundamental nature is complete just as it is. Not complete in the sense of being perfect or having everything we need, but complete in the sense of lacking nothing essential. The Buddhist term for this is tathata, suchness or thusness. It means that things are exactly as they are, complete in their very being, before we add all our judgments and stories and desires for them to be different. When we apply this teaching to the experience of loneliness, something remarkable happens. Instead of seeing loneliness as evidence that something is missing, that we lack connection or love or belonging, we can begin to see it as simply what's present in this moment. The loneliness is complete in itself. It's not pointing towards something else we need to acquire. It's not a problem requiring a solution. It's just this sensation in the chest, this thought passing through awareness, this momentary state that has arisen from causes and conditions and will pass when those conditions change. We don't have to make it change. Change is its nature. We don't have to fix ourselves or our circumstances. There's nothing fundamentally wrong or broken. We simply have to stop adding layers of resistance and storytelling to the bare experience itself. This teaching can sound cold or uncaring, as if we're being told to just accept our suffering and not try to make things better. But that's a misunderstanding. The recognition of emptiness doesn't lead to passive resignation, but rather to a profound freedom. If loneliness has no solid, unchanging essence, then we're not trapped by it. If the self that feels lonely is itself empty of fixed identity, then we're not defined by this feeling. We can meet the experience with interest and curiosity rather than fear and resistance. The paradox of aloneness as completeness. One of the most counterintuitive teachings in Zen Buddhism is that our fundamental nature is complete just as it is. Not complete in the sense of being perfect or having everything we need, but complete in the sense of lacking nothing essential. The Buddhist term for this is tathata, suchness or thusness. It means that things are exactly as they are, complete in their very being, before we add all our judgments and stories and desires for them to be different. When we apply this teaching to the experience of loneliness, something remarkable happens. Instead of seeing loneliness as evidence that something is missing, that we lack connection or love or belonging, we can begin to see it as simply what's present in this moment. The loneliness is complete in itself. It's not pointing towards something else we need to acquire. It's not a problem requiring a solution. It's just this sensation in the chest, this thought passing through awareness, this momentary state that has arisen from causes and conditions and will pass when those conditions change. We don't have to make it change. Change is its nature. We don't have to fix ourselves or our circumstances. There's nothing fundamentally wrong or broken. We simply have to stop adding layers of resistance and storytelling to the bare experience itself. This teaching can sound cold or uncaring, as if we're being told to just accept our suffering and not try to make things better. But that's a misunderstanding. The recognition of emptiness doesn't lead to passive resignation, but rather to a profound freedom. If loneliness has no solid, unchanging essence, then we're not trapped by it. If the self that feels lonely is itself empty of fixed identity, then we're not defined by this feeling. We can meet the experience with interest and curiosity rather than fear and resistance. The paradox of aloneness as completeness. One of the most counterintuitive teachings in Zen Buddhism is that our fundamental nature is complete just as it is. Not complete in the sense of being perfect or having everything we need, but complete in the sense of lacking nothing essential. The Buddhist term for this is tathata, suchness or thusness. It means that things are exactly as they are, complete in their very being, before we add all our judgments and stories and desires for them to be different. When we apply this teaching to the experience of loneliness, something remarkable happens. Instead of seeing loneliness as evidence that something is missing, that we lack connection or love or belonging, we can begin to see it as simply what's present in this moment. The loneliness is complete in itself. It's not pointing towards something else we need to acquire. It's not a problem requiring a solution. It's just this sensation in the chest, this thought passing through awareness, this momentary state that has arisen from causes and conditions and will pass when those conditions change. We don't have to make it change. Change is its nature. We don't have to fix ourselves or our circumstances.
Impermanence. We suffer not because life is terrible, but because we keep trying to find permanent satisfaction in temporary things. We keep trying to hold on to pleasant experiences and push away unpleasant ones, even though the nature of experience is to constantly change. In relation to loneliness, dukkha manifests as our resistance to the feeling, our belief that we shouldn't feel this way, our desire for it to be different. The loneliness itself is unpleasant, yes, but much of our suffering comes from fighting it, from telling ourselves stories about what it means. I'm broken, I'll always be alone, nobody understands me, from desperately trying to make it go away. The Buddha's famous teaching is that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. The pain of loneliness is real, but the additional suffering we create through resistance and storytelling is optional. The third characteristic, anatta, or no self, is perhaps the most challenging to understand. It doesn't mean we don't exist or that we don't have a self in the conventional sense. Rather, it means that when we look for a permanent, unchanging essence that we can call I or me, we can't find it. What we call the self is actually a constantly changing process, a stream of experiences, thoughts, sensations, and emotions that we retroactively label as belonging to a self. But where is this self? Is it in the body? In the brain? In our thoughts? In our feelings? When we look closely, we find only this moment's experience already changing into the next moment's experience. This teaching becomes profoundly relevant when we're experiencing inexplicable loneliness. Who is it that's lonely? When we investigate with the precision that Zen practice cultivates, we find sensations in the body, thoughts passing through awareness, memories and associations. But can we find the solid, permanent self who owns these experiences? The teaching of no self isn't meant to make us disappear or to deny our existence. It's meant to free us from the suffering that comes from clinging to a fixed identity that was never there in the first place. Together, these three characteristics point toward a way of meeting difficult experiences that doesn't require fixing, transcending, or spiritually bypassing them.
We can be with the loneliness fully, recognizing its impermanent nature, seeing clearly the suffering we add through resistance, and investigating who exactly it is that feels lonely. This isn't cold or analytical, it's actually profoundly compassionate. We're learning to meet ourselves exactly as we are, with all our human feelings and vulnerabilities, without adding extra layers of judgment and resistance. Gateless gate, finding freedom in paradox. The Zen tradition is full of paradoxes, statements that seem to contradict themselves, but actually point toward truths that can't be captured in linear, logical thinking. The classic text, The Gateless Gate, is a collection of koans, those famous Zen riddles or teaching stories that are designed to short-circuit the conceptual mind and open direct insight into the nature of reality. One famous koan asks, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" The master Zhaozhou answered, "Mu," which means no, or nothing, or not, but also contains a kind of absolute negation that includes everything. This isn't a logical answer, it's an invitation to drop beneath the level of conceptual thought and directly experience the question without needing an intellectual resolution. The experience of inexplicable loneliness has something of this koan-like quality. We can't resolve it logically, we can't think our way out of it or find the right answer that makes it disappear. But when we simply sit with it, when we drop beneath the level of needing to resolve or understand, something shifts. Not because we've achieved anything or figured anything out, but because we've stopped fighting reality. The Gateless Gate of the koan collection's title refers to the paradox that there's a gate to pass through in practice, and yet there is no gate. The gate is the activity of trying to pass through it. The freedom we seek is already here, already present, but our very seeking obscures it. This is directly relevant to working with loneliness. We feel alone and we want to feel connected, so we search for connection outside ourselves. But the very act of searching reinforces the belief that we're separate, that connection is somewhere else, that we're incomplete as we are. The gate we're trying to pass through is created by us trying to pass through it. The Japanese Zen master Hakuin was once asked by a student, "Where shall I enter Zen?" Hakuin replied, "Do you hear the sound of that mountain stream?" The student said yes. Hakuin said, "Enter there." This teaching points toward the ordinary as the doorway to the extraordinary, the present moment as the only place where awakening is possible. We can't enter Zen or find the end of loneliness by going somewhere else, becoming someone different, achieving some special state. We can only enter here, now, through this experience, whatever it is. When we feel that inexplicable loneliness at night, rather than seeing it as an obstacle to peace or happiness, we can recognize it as itself the gateless gate. This is where we enter, not by making the loneliness go away, but by entering it fully, by being completely present with it without trying to change it or escape it. The koan is, how do you experience loneliness without being lonely? The answer isn't intellectual. It's found in the direct experience of being fully present with the feeling without adding the story of a separate self who's suffering from it. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Perhaps the most famous teaching from the Heart Sutra, a central text in Mahayana Buddhism, states, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form." The same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, and consciousness. This teaching directly addresses the dualistic thinking that creates so much of our suffering. We tend to divide reality into opposites, good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant, self and other, loneliness and connection. We want to hold on to one side and push away the other. But the Heart Sutra teaches that these apparent opposites are not actually separate. They arise together, depend on each other for their existence, are ultimately not two different things, but different aspects of the same reality. Applied to loneliness, this teaching suggests that loneliness and connection are not opposites in the way we usually think. Connection doesn't exist independently somewhere outside our loneliness that we need to go find. The very experience of loneliness arises only in relation to our concept of connection. We can't know one without the other. They're like two sides of the same coin, different faces of the same jewel, complementary aspects of our relational existence as human beings. When we stop trying to eliminate loneliness and replace it with connection, when we stop seeing them as opposites locked in combat, we can begin to experience the truth that the Heart Sutra points toward. The loneliness is empty of independent existence. It arises from causes and conditions and constantly changes. And this very emptiness is the form the loneliness takes, the actual experience of sensation, thought, and feeling. Neither can exist without the other. The two are not two.
They're the rich complexity of human experience when we stop trying to reduce it to simple either-or categories. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki spoke about this when he said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." The beginner's mind doesn't already know that loneliness is bad and connection is good, that we should feel one way and not another. It can hold all the contradictions and paradoxes without needing to resolve them into neat categories. It can be alone and not alone at the same time. It can feel lonely and still recognize the complete interconnection of all things. It can experience both the form, the actual sensation of loneliness, and the emptiness, the lack of any fixed, permanent nature to that sensation, simultaneously, the eternal witness above. Throughout human history, across every culture and civilization, humans have looked to the night sky and found in the moon a companion to their solitude. Unlike the sun, which demands our attention with its brightness and heat, the moon offers a gentler presence, reflective rather than radiating, cool rather than warm, present in its phases of fullness and emptiness in ways that mirror our own inner cycles. When we feel that inexplicable loneliness descending with the darkness, the moon hangs in the sky as a reminder that we're not the first to feel this way, nor will we be the last. The moon is, in many ways, the perfect symbol for the kind of loneliness we're exploring. It travels through the sky in apparent solitude, separated from Earth by nearly 250,000 miles of empty space, too far to touch, too distant for direct connection, and yet intimately bound to our planet through invisible forces. It affects our tides, influences the behavior of countless organisms, marks time in a way that predates human civilization, all while maintaining its essential separateness. The moon is alone and yet thoroughly connected, isolated and yet influential, separate and yet integral to the rhythms of life on Earth. In Japanese culture, the practice of tsukimi, or moon viewing, has been celebrated for over 1,000 years. People gather on autumn evenings to appreciate the beauty of the full moon, to write poetry, to reflect on impermanence and the passage of time. There's a concept in Japanese aesthetics called mono no awai, a kind of wistful awareness of the transience of things that brings both sadness and beauty. The moon, waxing and waning in its eternal cycle, embodies this perfectly. It's never the same from one night to the next, always changing, always in flux, and yet somehow always itself. The Chinese poets of the Tang Dynasty wrote extensively about the moon as a companion to loneliness and exile. Li Bai, perhaps the greatest of the Tang poets, wrote of drinking alone beneath the moon, raising his cup to the moonlight as if toasting a friend. In one famous poem, he writes of the moon and his own shadow joining him so that his solitude becomes a party of three. This isn't denial of loneliness, but rather a transformation of relationship with it, a recognition that even in solitude we're accompanied by the natural world, by the play of light and shadow, by the vast cosmic dance that continues regardless of our human concerns. The moon doesn't judge our loneliness. It doesn't try to fix us or tell us we shouldn't feel this way. It simply hangs in the sky, following its ancient path, a silent witness to all the human joys and sorrows that have ever been experienced beneath its light. There's something profoundly comforting in this non-judgmental presence. The moon has seen countless humans experiencing exactly what we're experiencing now. It has witnessed every lonely night, every inexplicable ache, every person who has looked up and wondered if they're the only one who feels this way. Lunar phases and emotional tides. The moon's most obvious characteristic is its constant change. From new moon to full moon and back again, it cycles through its phases with perfect regularity, taking approximately 29.5 days to complete one full cycle. This rhythmic waxing and waning has captured human imagination since our earliest ancestors first looked up and wondered at the sky. But beyond its symbolic significance, the moon's phases have been connected to actual changes in human emotion and behavior throughout history, though the scientific evidence for these connections remains debated and complex. What's undeniable is that many people report feeling more emotionally volatile, more sensitive, more prone to both highs and lows during the full moon. The word lunacy comes from the Latin luna, meaning moon, reflecting an ancient belief in the moon's power to affect mental states. Modern research has produced mixed results on whether the full moon actually increases psychiatric emergencies, sleep disturbances, or emotional instability, but the subjective experience of many people suggests some kind of connection, even if it's more psychological than physiological. From a Buddhist perspective, whether the moon actually causes these changes is less important than how we work with the experience. If we notice that our loneliness intensifies during certain phases of the moon, this gives us information about the patterns of our own inner weather. Just as the moon cycles through phases of brightness and darkness, so too does our emotional life cycle through periods of connection and isolation, fullness and emptiness. Recognizing this can help us hold our difficult moments with more perspective. This loneliness is a phase, like the moon's phase. It will wax and it will wane. It's not permanent, it's not who we are, it's simply where we are in the cycle right now. The new moon, invisible in the night sky, represents a kind of emptiness, a darkness, a void. For many spiritual traditions, this is not negative, but rather pregnant with possibility, the empty space from which new things emerge. When we feel that hollowness in our chest, that sense of something missing or absent, we might connect with the energy of the new moon. This is the empty bowl that can be filled, the blank page that can be written upon, the silence before the song. It's uncomfortable because we're culturally conditioned to fear emptiness, to fill every space with noise and activity and stimulation. But the new moon teaches us that emptiness has its own value, its own power, its own rightful place in the cycle. As the moon waxes towards fullness, growing a little larger each night, there's a building energy, a sense of things coming to fruition. If we're paying attention to our inner landscape with the same care we might observe the night sky, we might notice corresponding movements in our emotional life. Periods of loneliness might begin to ease as we move through certain phases, not because anything external has changed, but simply because we're moving through our own internal cycle. The Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh encourages practitioners to embrace both the light and the dark, to recognize that just as the moon needs its dark phase to complete its cycle, so too do we need our moments of darkness, of unknowing, of emptiness. The full moon, brilliant and complete, seems to represent the opposite of loneliness, fullness, brightness, the ability to see clearly even in the darkness. And yet, the full moon is also the moment just before the waning begins, the peak that contains within it the seed of its own decline. This is the Buddhist teaching of impermanence made visible in the sky. Nothing stays at the peak. Everything that rises must fall. Everything that becomes full must empty again. This isn't pessimistic, it's liberating. It means we don't have to cling desperately to moments of happiness and connection,
Knowing they'll give way to other moments. And it means we don't have to despair during moments of loneliness, knowing they too will pass. Moonlight and shadow, the interplay of seen and unseen. The moon doesn't generate its own light. It reflects the sun's light, giving us a softer, cooler, more mysterious version of that brilliant solar radiance. This reflected quality makes moonlight particularly apt as a metaphor for consciousness itself. We think of ourselves as the source of our thoughts and feelings, but in many ways we're more like the moon, reflecting inputs from the environment, from our past conditioning, from the collective cultural atmosphere we're embedded in.
The loneliness we feel isn't always generated from within. Sometimes we're reflecting the loneliness we've absorbed from the culture around us, from social media, from the isolation built into modern life, from the accumulated pain of generations. Understanding this reflective quality can free us from taking our emotional states too personally. If the moon isn't less valuable or beautiful because it reflects rather than radiates light, then perhaps we're not less valuable or whole because our emotional states arise from causes and conditions rather than being inherent to our true nature. The loneliness is real as an experience, but it's not essentially who we are. It's a reflection, a temporary state, arising and passing based on various factors we may not even be aware of. Moonlight also creates shadows in a way that sunlight doesn't. The oblique angle, the softer glow, the way it picks out certain features while leaving others in darkness, all of this creates a landscape of light and shadow that's quite different from the even illumination of daylight. When we're experiencing that inexplicable loneliness at night, we might be in the shadow spaces of our own psyche, the parts that don't get lit up during the busy brightness of day. These shadow spaces aren't bad or wrong, they're simply less visible most of the time, less accessible to our conscious awareness. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, though not a Buddhist, developed ideas about the shadow that align interestingly with Zen teachings about embracing all aspects of our experience. He taught that the shadow contains not just our negative qualities, but also our unrealized potential, our creative energy, aspects of ourselves we've disowned or never developed. When loneliness drives us into these shadow spaces at night, we're not just suffering, we're potentially encountering parts of ourselves we need to integrate, wisdom we need to reclaim, energy that's been locked away. In Zen practice, there's a recognition that we must become intimate with the darkness to truly understand the light. The Diamond Sutra, an important Mahayana Buddhist text, teaches that all phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow. The shadow isn't less real than the substance that casts it. Both are equally empty of inherent existence, equally part of the dance of appearances that makes up our experience. The loneliness we feel, the solid, separate self that seems to be lonely, the whole felt sense of isolation, all of this is like a shadow, real as an appearance, but empty of the solid, permanent essence we attribute to it. When we sit under the moonlight, literally or imaginatively, we can practice being both light and shadow. We don't have to eliminate the shadows to appreciate the light. We don't have to flood every dark corner with brightness to feel safe and whole. The beauty of a moonlit night comes precisely from the interplay of light and shadow, the way they define each other, create depth and dimension, reveal the world in a different aspect than daylight provides. Our loneliness might be the shadow that helps us appreciate connection when it comes. Our solitude might be the darkness that teaches us to value the light. The moon in Zen poetry and practice. Zen poetry, particularly the tradition of haiku developed in Japan, returns again and again to the moon as subject and inspiration. These brief poems, just 17 syllables in Japanese, capture moments of insight, flashes of awareness, often involving natural phenomena like the moon. The master haiku poet Matsuo Basho wrote countless poems featuring the moon, using it as a way to point toward truths that can't be captured in logical discourse. One famous haiku by Basho reads, in translation, "The moon so pure, a wandering priest pauses by the pond." This simple image contains layers of meaning. The moon is pure, untainted, complete in itself, even though it's reflected in water, suggesting that enlightenment or wholeness isn't diminished by being reflected in the imperfect mirror of human consciousness. The priest pauses, stops his restless movement, becomes still enough to see the reflection, and in that stillness, in that pause, there's a moment of connection between the eternal moon and the temporary reflection, between the cosmic and the human scale of existence. Another Basho haiku, Cloud of Cherry Blossoms, is the bell from Ueno or from Asakasa. Here, the poet can't tell which temple bell he's hearing, whether it's coming from Ueno or Asakasa. The uncertainty, the not knowing, is itself the point. The moon appears in many of his other poems as something that appears and disappears behind clouds, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, but always there whether we can see it or not. This is relevant to working with loneliness. The sense of connection and belonging is always there whether we can feel it in this moment or not. Clouds of emotion, thoughts, circumstance might obscure it, but they don't eliminate it. The practice of composing or reading haiku under the moon is itself a kind of meditation. The brevity of the form requires precision, attention to the immediate, letting go of elaboration and explanation. When we're caught in that inexplicable loneliness, we're often drowning in elaboration, stories about what it means, why we feel this way, what's wrong with us, what we're lacking. The haiku mind cuts through all that and simply notes lonely, night, moon above, breath moving. These bare facts of experience without all the narrative overlay we usually add. The contemporary Zen teacher Kobun Chino Otogawa once said, "You are the sky. Everything else is just the weather." The moon is part of the sky, part of the vast expanse that holds all weather, all phenomena, without being disturbed by them. When we identify as the weather, the loneliness, the sadness, the joy, the connection, we're tossed about by every changing condition. But when we recognize ourselves as the sky, as the vast awareness within which all these experiences arise and pass, we find a stability that doesn't depend on conditions being a particular way. This doesn't mean we become detached or uncaring. The sky is intimately involved with all the weather patterns it contains. Rain falls from it, clouds form within it, storms rage in its space. But the sky itself isn't damaged by storms, doesn't cling to clear days, doesn't resist clouds. It simply is, vast and accommodating, holding everything that comes. When we feel that lunar quality of awareness, present, reflective, cycling through phases but always essentially itself, we discover we can be lonely without being damaged by loneliness, alone without losing our fundamental connection to all things. Finding the moon when clouds obscure. Of course, not every night offers a clear view of the moon. Clouds obscure it, weather systems block it from view. Sometimes we know intellectually that the moon is there behind the clouds, but we can't see it, can't access its light, can't feel its presence. This too is relevant to our exploration of loneliness. There are times when our sense of connection, of meaning, of fundamental okayness is completely obscured by the weather systems of our psyche. We know, perhaps, that there's something beyond this cloud cover, but we can't access it. We're stuck in the fog, the overcast, the storm. The Zen approach to this situation is not to deny the clouds or try to blow them away through force of will. It's to become intimate with the clouds themselves. What are they made of? Where did they come from? What's their nature? Clouds are water vapor, condensed around tiny particles, forming temporary structures that shift and change with every movement of air. They're empty of any permanent essence. They're here for a while, and then they disperse. The same is true of the mental and emotional clouds that obscure our access to peace, connection, and clarity. When you're lying awake at 3 a.m. with that hollow feeling in your chest, and the moon might as well not exist for all the good it does you in that moment, this is valuable information too. This is the cloudy night, the occluded view, the time when we can't access our usual sources of comfort or meaning. Rather than seeing this as failure or evidence that nothing works, we can recognize it as simply the current weather. The moon hasn't gone anywhere. Our fundamental nature hasn't been damaged. We're just in the clouds right now, and clouds are part of the full picture, part of the complete cycle.
There's a Zen story about a monk who asked his master, "What is Buddha?" The master replied, 3 pounds of flax. This seemingly nonsensical answer points toward the Buddha nature, the awakened nature, being present in the most ordinary things, in flax, in clouds, in loneliness, in the inability to see the moon when we most want to. We're always looking for the moon in some special place, some ideal condition, but it's right here, in the cloudy night, in the difficult feeling, in the inability to make things be other than they are. The practice then becomes, how do we be with the clouds? How do we meet the obscured view without adding extra suffering through our demand that the view be clear? Can we appreciate cloud night in the same way we appreciate moon night, recognizing that both are necessary aspects of the full cycle? This doesn't mean we have to enjoy the clouds or prefer them to clear skies. It means we stop fighting reality, stop insisting that this moment be different from what it is, and discover that peace and even joy can be found right in the middle of the cloudy night. The hidden network beneath our feet. In recent decades, forest ecology has revealed something extraordinary that ancient peoples seem to have known intuitively. Trees are not the isolated individuals they appear to be. Beneath the forest floor exists an intricate network of fungal filaments called mycelium, connecting tree roots in a vast underground communication and resource-sharing system that scientists have dubbed the Wood Wide Web. This mycorrhizal network allows trees to share nutrients, send warning signals about pest attacks, even direct resources preferentially towards their own offspring or trees that are struggling. This discovery has profound implications for how we think about connection and isolation. What appears separate above ground is intimately connected below the surface. The oak tree standing alone in apparent solitude is actually engaged in constant communication and exchange with the forest around it, sharing carbon, nitrogen, water, and chemical signals through fungal partners. The loneliness is an optical illusion created by looking only at what's visible above ground. The reality is thorough interconnection, mutual dependence, ongoing relationship. The forest ecologist Zen-inspired, whose research helped reveal the extent of these mycorrhizal networks, speaks of mother trees, the oldest, largest trees in a forest that serve as hubs in the network, supporting younger trees and maintaining the health of the whole forest community. These mother trees can recognize their own kin through chemical signals and direct more resources towards their offspring, but they also support unrelated trees, maintaining diversity and resilience in the forest ecosystem. The trees are individuals and collective simultaneously, separate and connected, alone and thoroughly enmeshed in relationship. This is precisely what Buddhist philosophy has been teaching for millennia, the fundamental interconnection of all things, what's called dependent origination or interdependent co-arising. Nothing exists independently. Everything arises only in relation to everything else. The tree depends on soil, sunlight, water, fungal partners, insects, microbes, the death and decay of previous generations of trees. It's not a separate thing that happens to have connections. It's a process of relationship, a node in a vast web, definable only in terms of its connections. When we feel that inexplicable loneliness, we're like a tree that has forgotten the network beneath its roots. We look at the visible surface of our lives and see separation, isolation, the distance between ourselves and others. But beneath the surface, we're engaged in constant exchange with our environment. Every breath we take brings in oxygen that trees and algae have produced. Every breath we release provides carbon dioxide that green plants need for photosynthesis. We're trading atoms with the whole biosphere constantly, exchanging matter and energy with everything around us. The boundary between self and world is nowhere near as solid as it seems. The patience of trees and the rush of thoughts. Trees operate on a time scale that's radically different from human consciousness. A tree might take 50 years to reach maturity, might live for hundreds or even thousands of years. Its responses to stimuli unfold over hours and days rather than seconds. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases chemical signals that warn neighboring trees, which then begin producing defensive compounds. But this process takes hours to days to complete. The tree's now is vastly more extended than ours. This difference in timescale offers a powerful teaching about working with difficult emotions like loneliness. Our thoughts and feelings move quickly, arising and passing, often within seconds. A wave of loneliness crashes over us, and we react immediately, maybe by reaching for our phone, turning on the television, calling a friend, doing anything to not feel what we're feeling. But what if we could meet that loneliness with tree time instead of thought time? What if we could slow down our response, extend our now, give the feeling space to simply be without immediately reacting to it? In Zen meditation practice, this is sometimes called just sitting, or shikantaza, sitting without any particular object of concentration, without trying to achieve any special state, simply being present with whatever arises. When loneliness arises during this practice, we don't immediately spin into thoughts about it or try to make it go away. We feel it in the body. We notice its texture, its location, its quality. We let it be, the way a tree lets the weather be. Rain comes and the tree gets wet. Sun comes and the tree absorbs light. Wind comes and the tree bends. The tree doesn't have a story about whether this is good or bad weather. It simply responds appropriately in the moment. This isn't suppression or denial of difficult feelings. It's a different relationship with them, one that has space and patience built in. The loneliness doesn't have to be immediately resolved, understood, or eliminated. It can simply be part of the weather of this moment. And when we give it that space, when we don't rush to make it different, something interesting often happens. The loneliness begins to reveal itself as something more complex than we initially thought. It has different layers, different qualities. It's connected to memories, to sensations, to thoughts, to stories we tell ourselves. It's not one solid thing, but a constellation of experiences, all changing, all in flux.
The bristlecone pine trees that live in the high mountains of California and Nevada can survive for over 4,000 years in harsh conditions that would kill most other plants. They grow incredibly slowly, sometimes adding less than 1/100th of an inch to their diameter in a year. Their wood is dense, nearly free of rot, capable of enduring extreme cold, drought, and wind. They accomplish this precisely through patience, through slow growth, through not rushing toward anything. There's a teaching here about sustainable practice, about the kind of relationship with our inner life that can endure over the long term. When we're experiencing difficult emotions, our culture encourages quick fixes, instant relief, rapid transformation. But sustainable change, real transformation of our relationship with difficult states, requires the patience of trees. We need to be willing to grow slowly, to endure discomfort, to not demand immediate results. The oak tree doesn't abandon its slow growth strategy because winter is hard. It endures winter, knowing that spring will come, and it grows according to its own nature, not according to some imposed timetable of how fast it should be developing. The wisdom of falling leaves. Every autumn, deciduous trees perform an act that looks like death, but is actually sophisticated survival strategy. They withdraw nutrients from their leaves back into their branches and trunk, seal off the connection between leaf and twig, and let their leaves fall. The tree appears to be dying, losing its life force, becoming barren, but actually, it's preparing for winter, protecting itself from damage, consolidating its resources for the cold months ahead. Come spring, new leaves will emerge, fed by the nutrients carefully stored during fall. This cycle of letting go and renewal speaks directly to the experience of loneliness and loss that can feel so absolute in the moment. When we're experiencing difficult emotions, our culture encourages quick fixes, instant relief, rapid transformation. But sustainable change, real transformation of our relationship with difficult states, requires the patience of trees. We need to be willing to grow slowly, to endure discomfort, to not demand immediate results. The oak tree doesn't abandon its slow growth strategy because winter is hard. It endures winter, knowing that spring will come, and it grows according to its own nature, not according to some imposed timetable of how fast it should be developing. The wisdom of falling leaves. Every autumn, deciduous trees perform an act that looks like death, but is actually sophisticated survival strategy. They withdraw nutrients from their leaves back into their branches and trunk, seal off the connection between leaf and twig, and let their leaves fall. The tree appears to be dying, losing its life force, becoming barren, but actually, it's preparing for winter, protecting itself from damage, consolidating its resources for the cold months ahead. Come spring, new leaves will emerge, fed by the nutrients carefully stored during fall. This cycle of letting go and renewal speaks directly to the experience of loneliness and loss that can feel so absolute in the moment. When we're experiencing difficult emotions, our culture encourages quick fixes, instant relief, rapid transformation. But sustainable change, real transformation of our relationship with difficult states, requires the patience of trees. We need to be willing to grow slowly, to endure discomfort, to not demand immediate results. The oak tree doesn't abandon its slow growth strategy because winter is hard. It endures winter, knowing that spring will come, and it grows according to its own nature, not according to some imposed timetable of how fast it should be developing.
This raises an interesting question about our own emotional signals. When we feel lonely, anxious, sad, or troubled, what are we signaling? To ourselves? To others? Sometimes emotional states that seem purely internal are actually signals trying to get our attention, trying to tell us something important about our situation or our needs. The loneliness might be signaling that certain relationships need attention, that we've been isolating ourselves in unhealthy ways, that we need to reach out, that something in our life structure isn't working. But often we override these signals or misinterpret them. We think loneliness means I'm broken and need to be fixed, when it might actually mean I need genuine connection, or I need time alone to integrate recent experiences, or I'm changing and old patterns no longer fit. We think the signal itself is the problem and try to eliminate it, rather than reading what it's trying to tell us. Learning to read our own signals requires the same kind of patient, detailed attention that a forester might bring to reading the forest. In traditional forestry, experts can look at the color of leaves, the pattern of growth, the health of bark, and diagnose what the tree needs: more nitrogen, better drainage, protection from a particular pest. We can develop similar expertise with our own inner landscape. When loneliness arises, what are its specific qualities? Is it accompanied by restlessness or lethargy? Does it come with thoughts about specific situations or people? Does it live more in the chest or the gut or somewhere else? All of this information helps us understand what the signal is actually saying. The practice of mindfulness, of bringing non-judgmental attention to our present moment experience, is essentially learning to read our own signals more accurately. Instead of immediately reacting to loneliness with, "This is bad, make it stop," we can get curious. What is this? What is it asking for? What does it need? Sometimes the answer is connection with others. Sometimes it's connection with ourselves. Sometimes it's simply space to be felt and acknowledged without needing to be fixed or changed. Entering the night garden. Imagine, if you will, a garden at night. Not the cultivated brightness of a garden under floodlights, but a garden as it truly is when darkness falls. Shapes softening into silhouettes, colors giving way to gradations of shadow, the daytime clarity replaced by mystery and suggestion. This is the garden where everything familiar becomes slightly strange, where the boundaries between things blur, where we must rely on senses other than sight to navigate. This night garden is a perfect metaphor for the inner landscape we inhabit when that inexplicable loneliness arrives. The clear light of reason that usually guides us through our days grows dim. The familiar markers we use to orient ourselves seem less certain. We're forced to feel our way rather than see our way, to trust other forms of knowing beyond the rational mind's usual dominance. This can be frightening, yes, but it can also be an invitation into a different kind of awareness, one that's more receptive, more intuitive, more directly in contact with reality as it is, rather than as we think it should be. In many contemplative traditions, the garden at night holds special significance. It's a liminal space, a threshold between the ordinary and the extraordinary, between the mundane and the sacred. The Garden of Gethsemane was a nighttime garden where Jesus wrestled with his fate. The Buddha attained enlightenment during the night, sitting beneath the Bodhi tree through the hours of darkness, facing down his demons and delusions before the morning star appeared. Zen monasteries often have gardens specifically designed for nighttime contemplation, where monks might sit in meditation under the stars, surrounded by carefully placed rocks and raked gravel that look entirely different in darkness than in light. The night garden teaches us that darkness is not the absence of light, but a different kind of presence. In the darkness, we can see stars that are invisible during the day. We notice sounds we missed when visual stimuli dominated our attention. The rustle of leaves, the movement of small creatures, the wind's subtle variations. We smell things more acutely, the perfume of night-blooming flowers, the rich scent of earth and growing things, the particular quality of air that has cooled after a warm day. When we enter our own night garden, when we allow ourselves to be present with the darkness of not knowing, of uncertainty, of that loneliness that can't be explained or resolved, we give ourselves the chance to notice what's been there all along, but invisible in the bright light of our usual consciousness. We might notice the constant rhythm of breath that continues whether we're happy or sad, connected or alone. We might become aware of the miracle of the body doing its work, heart beating, blood flowing, cells performing their intricate dances of being alive. We might sense our connection to the earth beneath us, to the vast sky above us, to the generations of humans who have felt exactly what we're feeling now.